You're listening to WEEU Radio, broadcasting at 830 on the AM dial from Reading, Pennsylvania. I'm Jingle Schnutz, the WEEU Holiday Festival of Sound Elf. Having a great time with you during this holiday season. And now, more of our Holiday Festival of Sound.
Next up on WEEU's Holiday Festival of Sound, we're going to go to the islands and enjoy a little bit of the Caribbean Latino sound and flavor this holiday season as they would celebrate with music and food. We're going to speak with the owner of Mi Casa Su Casa, a wonderful restaurant on Penn Street in downtown Reading, and then we'll hear some more music in the island tradition and Latino style. This is a band called Cuba L.A. with their rendition of Deck the Halls. You're listening to WEEU's Holiday Festival of Sound. In the background, we hear a traditional Navidad or Christmas carol from the Dominican Republic. This is the way it sounds in the island, so gorgeous and beautiful. And we're going to speak next with the proprietor of a wonderful downtown restaurant by the name of Mi Casa Su Casa. And then after that, we'll hear some more sounds of the islands in this segment of WEEU's Holiday Festival of Sound, right now celebrating the Latino Christmas culture, heritages, and traditions. You are listening to WEEU Radio's Holiday Festival of Sound. It's our joyous celebration of family, friends, community members coming together to celebrate the holiday season through music and through things like food and the sharing of culture and diversity. And would you please tell us who you are? I'm in a downtown restaurant here called Mi Casa Su Casa. You make delicious food. You're the owner. Tell us your name and where you're from.
Johanny Cepeda, and I am from the Dominican Republic.
Okay, from the Dominican. So, in the Dominican Republic, are there any traditional dishes that you still to this day that maybe you had as a little girl,
Yes.
and now that you're living in Reading, Pennsylvania, that you like? Tell us about some of that stuff.
Yes. Well, growing up, I remember Christmas Eve being like huge for us. The family will all get together. We'll all either travel to the Dominican Republic or get together at some family's member home, and we'd have lechon, or also known as pernil. That was always big on the table. The tables would be set up, lots of food and desserts, and we would all just sit together and eat and have fun and dance. Always a great event. So what I do every year here at Mi Casa Su Casa, I invite all of my family members and relatives and close friends, and we do our Noche Buena, which is what we call Christmas Eve, right here at our restaurant. And everybody brings something, and it's just, trying to recreate what I lived as a child so that my children can continue doing the same. But, in terms of food, arroz con gandules, the pernil, which is the roast pork, there's chicken, there's potato salad. I mean, it's a variety of stuff, empanadillas. I mean, we just have a great time.
So make us hungry. Tell us a little bit about some of the ingredients or the recipes. Is it because it's the island, is there any spiciness to it during the holiday season, or we don't have the spiciness, or, it's very festive because it's the island feel, right? But there is such a thing as Christmas in the island, in the Caribbean, right?
Yes, absolutely. Like I said, Christmas Eve is like the major holiday for us, and there's a lot of sazon. There's a lot of the garlic, a lot of cilantro, tomatoes, the onions, and like what we do is like we blend a lot of these ingredients together and we make what we call a sofrito, and that's how we season and we marinate a lot of their meats the night before. And like our roast pork, it's in the oven for like a good 5 hours. So by the time it comes out, it's nice and tender and crunchy, crispy. I mean, it's delicious. I invite you to come over. You can hang out with us.
This is Christmas Eve?
Christmas Eve, that's right. The 24th of December.
Beautiful. So you're carrying the traditions from the old world with you here and gracing our Penn Street in Reading. Your location is right on the same side of the street as the Peanut Bar for people who know the Peanut Bar. Tell the folks when you're open, and again, tell us the name of the establishment. I've eaten here. It's absolutely delicious. You do carry on the tradition of good cooking. And by the way, I think food and music are two of the universal things that bring us all together culturally. Don't you agree?
Yes, absolutely. We're Mi Casa Su Casa Cafe, located at 320 Penn Street. We specialize in cafe, comfort, conversation, and creative arts. So come enjoy, your time here. You'll love our food. The ambiance is very comforting. We have lots of fun. We play music all the time, actually, here.
And if you wouldn't mind, could you give all of our listeners a traditional Latino greeting from the islands for the Christmas season? Tell us what it means in English and then, in Spanish, if you don't mind.
We say Feliz Navidad y Próspero Año Nuevo, which means Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, or Prosperous New Year, if you will.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
On our WEEU Holiday Festival of Sound, that was the owner of Mi Casa Su Casa, a great restaurant downtown Reading on Penn Street. That was Johanny Civela. And next up on the Festival of Sound, we return to the islands now with Oscar Lopez and a tune called Happy Christmas Latino Island Style.
Hi, this is Johanny from Mi Casa, Su Casa. I'd like to take this time to wish you a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Hola, mi nombre es Johanny Cepeda Freitas. Están escuchando WEEU, el programa del domingo, sesión de poca. Le quiero desear una feliz Navidad y próspero año nuevo.
My name is Rich Conrad, an elementary band teacher in the Reading School District, and I want to thank Reading Musical Foundation for their support of our music program. RMF's Operation Replay program collects donated instruments from community members and connects those instruments to students in need. Our students absolutely light up with joy when they're given this opportunity. If you have an unused instrument collecting dust in your house, please consider donating it to Operation Replay. Your generosity can make a difference in the life of an aspiring young musician. Find more information at readingmusicalfoundation.org.
Welcome back to WEU's Holiday Festival of Sound. I'm the host and executive producer of the show, Dave Klein, and what a pleasure it is for me to gather around the radio with you to enjoy these local recordings. People that are on this show are perhaps your family, friends, neighbors, colleagues, co-workers. Maybe it's even you. There's a good chance that somebody you know or have interacted with is part of WEU's Holiday Festival of Sound, and that's because we are very committed to our community. As Reading and Berks County's only remaining commercially operated radio station that's family-owned and operated, I can tell you that our motto here is, if we don't pay attention to the people, places, and things that support us, why in the world would we expect you to pay attention to us? And so it's with that spirit of giving that we offer you this program. I reached out to the Reading Musical Foundation and asked them if they would contact some of the musicians who interact with them and see if we could get some more holiday recordings from local people. And boy, was that productive. The next group is a band that calls themselves Dutch Funk. Now, it's Stephen Holgate and friends, and what they do is they play a New Orleans style of happy music that gets people up and dancing and carrying on and wanting to interact and be a part of things. So without further ado, let's hear some holiday tunes by Stephen Holgate and Dutch Funk. Every year at St. Paul's Evangelical Lutheran Church in Fleetwood, the Reading Philharmonic Orchestra puts on a wonderful free holiday concert for any and all who want to come and attend. Each year there's a fanciful theme, and everyone has fun. Here now is a recording from their 2016 concert as it happened live.
Earlier we heard familiar carols as though composed by Bach. This time you'll again be able to pick out parts of something familiar. The 12 Days of Christmas, only it is tucked in among the symphonic themes, such as Tchaikovsky's Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairies and the 1812 Overture. Oscar?
Merry Christmas and a happy Yuletide season to you. This is Dave Klein, executive producer of WEEU's Holiday Festival of Sound. You know, for decades, WEEU personality Jack Holcomb has entertained and engaged people by the thousands. And he loves nothing more than communicating back and forth with people, the art of broadcasting, and of course, all things traditional. That's why I thought it was appropriate that Jack read for us the immortal poem of Dylan Thomas entitled A Child's Christmas in Wales. This was recorded in November of 2018, so now sit back, relax, and enjoy Jack Holcomb at his finest with A Child's Christmas in Wales.
One Christmas was so much like another in those years around the Seatown corner, now and out of sound, except the distant speaking of the voices I sometimes hear a moment before sleep that I can never remember whether it snowed for 6 days and 6 nights when I was 12, or whether it snowed for 12 days and 12 nights when I was 6. All the Christmases roll down toward the two-tongued sea like cold and headlong moon bundling down the sky that was our street, and they stop at the rim of the ice-edged fish-freezing waves, and I plunge my hands in the snow and bring out whatever I can find. It goes into my hand deep into the white bell-tongued ball of holidays, resting on the rim of the carol-singing sea, and out comes Mrs. Prothero and the fireman. It was on the afternoon of Christmas Eve when I was in Mrs. Prothero's garden waiting for cats with her son Jim. It was snowing. It was always snowing on Christmas. December, in my memory, is white as Lapland, though there were no reindeer. But there were cats. Patient, cold, and callous, our hands wrapped in socks, we waited to snowball the cats. Sleek and long as jaguars and horrible whiskered, spitting and snarling, they would slink and sidle over the white-backed garden walls, and the lynx-eyed hunters, Jim and I, fur-capped and moccasined trappers from Hudson Bay off Mumbles Road, would hurl our deadly snowballs at the green of their eyes. The wise cats never appeared. We were so still, Eskimo-footed Arctic marksmen in the muffling silence of the eternal snows, eternal ever since Wednesday, that we never heard Mrs. Prothero's first cry from her igloo at the bottom of the garden. Or, if we heard it at all, it was to us like the far-off challenge of our enemy and prey, the neighbor's polar cat. But soon the voice grew louder. "Fire!" cried Mrs. Prothero, and she beat the dinner gong. And we ran down to the garden with snowballs in our arms toward the house, and smoke indeed was pouring out of the dining room, and the gong was bombarding, and Mrs. Prothero was announcing ruin like a town crier in Pompeii. This was better than all the cats and whales standing on the wall in a row. We bounded into the house laden with snowballs and stopped at the open door of the smoke-filled room. Something was burning all right. Perhaps it was Mr. Prothero, who always slept there after midday dinner with a newspaper over his face. But he was standing in the middle of the room saying, "A fine Christmas," and smacking at the smoke with his slipper. "Call the fire brigade," cried Mrs. Prothero as she beat the gong. "They won't be there," said Mr. Prothero. "It's Christmas." There was no fire to be seen, only clouds of smoke, and Mr. Prothero standing in the middle of them, waving his slipper as though he were conducting. "Do something," he said, and we threw our snowballs into the smoke. And I think we missed Mr. Prothero and ran out of the house to the telephone box. "Let's call the police as well," Jim said, "and the ambulance, and Ernie Jenkins. He likes fires." But we only called the fire brigade, and soon the fire engine came, and 3 tall men in helmets brought a hose into the house, and Mr. Prothero got out just in time before they turned it on. Nobody could have had a noisier Christmas Eve, and when the firemen turned off the hose and were standing in the wet, smoky room, Jim's aunt, Miss Prothero, came downstairs and peered in at them. Jim and I waited very quietly to hear what she would say to them. She said the right thing, always. She looked at the 3 tall firemen in their shining helmets, standing among the smoke and cinders and dissolving snowballs, and she said, "Would you like something to read?" Years and years ago, when I was a boy, when there were wolves and whales and the birds the color of red flannel petticoats whisked past the harp-shaped hills, when we sang and wallowed all night and day in caves that smelt like Sunday afternoons in damp front farmhouse parlors, and we chased with jawbones of deacons the English and the bears before the motor car, before the wheel, before the duchess-faced horse, when we rode the daft and happy hills bareback. It snowed and snowed. But here are small boys. Small boy says, "It snowed last year, too. Made a snowman, and my brother knocked it down, and I knocked my brother down, and then we had tea." But that was not the same snow, I say. Our snow was not only shaken from whitewash buckets down the sky, it came shawling out of the ground and swam and drifted out of arms and hands and bodies of trees. Snow grew overnight on the roofs of houses like a pure and grandfather moss, minutely ivied the walls and settled on the postmen, opening the gate like a dumb, numb thunderstorm of white, torn Christmas cards. Were there postmen then, too? With sprinkling eyes and wind-cherried noses on spread frozen feet that crunched up to the doors and mittened on them manfully, but all the children could hear was the ringing of bells. You mean the postmen went rat-a-tat-tat and the doors rang? I mean the bells the children could hear were inside them. I only hear thunder sometimes, never bells. There were church bells, too. Inside them? No. In the bat-black, snow-white belfries tugged by bishop and storks. And they rang their tidings over the bandaged town, over the frozen foam with powder and ice cream hills, over the crackling sea. It seemed that all the churches boomed of joy under my window, and the weathercocks crew for Christmas on our fence. Get back to the postman. They were just ordinary postmen, fond of walking and dogs and Christmas and the snow. They knocked on the doors with blue knuckles. Ours has a black knocker. And then they stood on the white welcome mat in the little drifted porches and huffed and puffed, making ghosts with their breath, and jogged from foot to foot like small boys wanting to go out. And then the presents, after the Christmas box. And the cold postman with a rose on his button nose tingled down the tea tray slithered run of the chilly glinting hill. He went in his ice-bound boots like a man on fishmonger slabs. He wagged his bag like a frozen camel's hump, dizzily turned the corner on one foot, and then, by God, he was gone. Get back to the presents. There were the useful presents, engulfing mufflers of the old coach days and mittens made for giant sloths, zebra scarfs of a substance like silky gum that could be tug-o-warred down to the galoshes, blinding tam-o'-shanters like patchwork tea-cozies, and bunny-suited busbies and balaclavas for victims of head-shrinking tribes. From aunts who always wore wool next to their skin, there were mustached and rasping vests that made you wonder why the ants had any skin left at all. And once I had a little crocheted nose bag from an aunt now, alas, no longer whinnying with us, and picturesque books in which small boys, though warned with quotations not to, would skate in Farmer Giles' pond and did and drowned, and books that told me everything about the wasp, except why. Go on, the useless presents. Bags of moist and many-colored jelly babies and a folded flag and a false nose and a tram conductor's cap and a machine that punched tickets and rang a bell, never a catapult once by mistake, with no one could explain. A little hatchet and a celluloid duck that made, when you pressed it, a most unduck-like sound, a mewing moo that an ambitious cat might make who wished to be a cow, and a painting book in which I could make the grass, the trees, the sea, and the animals any color I pleased, and still the dazzling sky-blue sheep are grazing in the red field under the rainbow-billed and pea-green birds. Hard-boileds, toffee, fudge, and all sorts, crunches, cracknels, humbugs, glaciers, marzipan, and butter welch for the Welch, and troops of bright tin soldiers who, if they could not fight, could always run, and snakes and families and happy ladders and easy hobby games for little engineers complete with instructions. Oh, easy for Leonardo! And a whistle to make the dogs bark to wake up the old man next door, to make him beat on the wall, and with his stick to shake our picture off the wall. And a packet of cigarettes. You put one in your mouth, and you stood in the corner of the street, and you waited for hours in vain for an old lady to scold you for smoking a cigarette. And with a smirk, you ate it. And then it was breakfast under the balloons. Were there uncles like in our house? There were always uncles at Christmas, the same uncles. And on Christmas morning, with dog-disturbing whistle and sugar fags, I would scour the Swatch town for the news of the little world and find always a dead bird on the post office, or by the white deserted swings. Perhaps a robin, all but one of his fires out. Men and women waiting or scooping back from chapel with taproom noses and wind-bust cheeks, all albinos huddled their stiff black charring feathers against the irreligious snow. Mistletoe hung from the gas brackets in all the front parlors, and there was sherry and walnuts and bottled beer and crackers by the dessert spoons, and cats in their fur abouts watched the fires and the high-heaped fire spat, all ready for the chestnuts and the mulling pokers. Some few large men sat in the front parlors without their collars, uncles almost certainly trying their new cigars, holding them out judiciously at arm's length, returning them to their mouths, coughing, then holding them out again, as though waiting for the explosion. And some few small aunts, not wanted in the kitchen, nor anywhere else for that matter, sat on the edge of their chairs, poised and brittle, afraid to break, like faded cups and saucers. Not many those mornings trod the piling streets, an old man always, fawn-bowlered, yellow-gloved, and at this time of year with spats of snow would take his constitutional to the white bowling green and back, as he would take it wet or fire on Christmas Day or Doomsday. Sometimes 2 hale young men with big pipes blazing, no overcoats and wind-blown scarfs would trudge, unspeaking, down to the forlorn sea to work up an appetite, to blow away the fumes, who knows, to walk into the waves until nothing of them was left but the 2 furling smoke clouds of their inextinguishable briars. Then I would be slap-dashing home, the gravy smell of the dinners of others, the bird smell, the brandy, the pudding and mince, coiling up to my nostrils, when out of the snow-clogged side lane would come a boy the spit of myself, with a pink-tipped cigarette and the violet past of a black eye, cocky as a bullfinch, leering all to himself. I hated him on sight and sound, and would be about to put my dog whistle to my lips and blow him off the face of Christmas, when suddenly he, with a violet wink, put his whistle to his lips, and blew so stridently, so high, so exquisitely loud, that gobbling faces, their cheeks bulged with goose, would press against their tinseled windows the whole length of the white echoing street. For dinner we had turkey and blazing pudding, and after dinner the uncles sat in the front of the fire, loosened all buttons, put their large moist hands over their watch chains, groaned a little, and slept. Mothers, aunts, and sisters scuttled to and fro, bearing tureens. Aunt Bessie, who had already been frightened twice by the clockwork mouse, whimpered at the sideboard, and had some elderberry wine. The dog was sick. Auntie Dosey had to have 3 aspirin, but Auntie Anna, who liked port, stood in the middle of the snowbound backyard, singing like a big-bosomed thrush. I would blow up balloons to see how big they would blow up, too, and when they burst, which all they did, the uncles jumped and rumbled. In the rich and heavy afternoon, the uncles breathing like dolphins, and the snow descending, I would sit among festoons and Chinese lanterns and nibble dates and try to make a model man-of-war following the instructions for little engineers, and produce what might be mistaken for a sea-going tram car. Or I would go out, my bright new boots squeaking, into the white world, onto the seaward hill, to call on Jim and Dan and Jack, and to pad through the still streets, leaving huge footprints on the hidden pavements. I bet people will think there's been hippos. What would you do if you saw a hippo coming down the street? Well, I'd go like this. Bang! I'd throw him over the railings and roll him down the hill, and then I'd tickle him under the ear, and he'd wag his tail. What would you do if you saw 2 hippos? Iron-flanked and billowing he-hippos clanked and battered through the scudding snow toward us as we passed Mr. Daniel's house. Let's post Mr. Daniels a snowball through his letterbox. Let's write things in the snow. Let's write Mr. Daniels looks like a spaniel all over the lawn. Or we walked on the white shore. Can the fishes see it snowing? The silent, one-clouded heavens drifted on to the sea. Now we were snow-blind travelers lost in the North Hills, and vast dew-lapped dogs with flasks around their necks ambled and shambled up to us, baying, "Excelsior!" We returned home through the poor streets, where only a few children fumbled with bare red fingers in the wheel-rutted snow, and catcalled after us, their voices fading away as we trudged uphill into the cries of the dock birds and the hooting of ships out in the whirling bay. And then, at tea, the recovered uncles would be jolly, and the ice cake loomed in the center of the table like a marble grave. Auntie Hannah laced her tea with rum, because it was only once a year. Bring out the tall tales now that we told by the fire as the gaslight bubbled like a diver. Ghosts hooed like owls in the long nights when I dared not look over my shoulder. Animals lurked in the cubbyhole under the stairs, and the gas meter ticked. And I remember that when we went singing carols once, when there wasn't the shaving of a moon to light the flying streets. At the end of the long road was a drive that led to a large house, and we stumbled up the darkness to the drive that night, each one of us afraid, each one holding a stone in his hand in case, and all of us too brave to say a word. The wind through the trees made noises as of old, and the unpleasant and maybe web-footed men wheezing in caves. When we reached the black bulk of the house, what shall we give them? Hark the herald? No, Jack said. Good King Wenceslas. I'll count 3. 1, 2, 3, and we began to sing, our voices high and seemingly distant in the snow-felted darkness round the house that was occupied by nobody we knew. We stood close together near the dark door. Good King Wenceslas looked out on the feast of Stephen. And then a small, dry voice, like the voice of someone who has not spoken for a long time, joined our singing. A small, dry, eggshell voice from the other side of the door. A small, dry voice through the keyhole. And when we stopped running, we were outside our house. The front room was lovely. Balloons floated under the hot water bottle gulping gas. Everything was good again and shone over the town. Perhaps it was a ghost, Jim said. Perhaps it was trolls, Dan said, who was always reading. Let's go in and see if there's any jelly left, Jack said. And we did that. Always on Christmas night there was music. An uncle played the fiddle, a cousin sang Cherry Ripe, another uncle sang Drake's Drum. It was very warm in the little house. Auntie Hannah, who had got on to the parsnip wine, sang a song about bleeding hearts and death, then another in which she and her heart was like a bird's nest. And then everybody laughed again, and then I went to bed. Looking through my bedroom window, out into the moonlight and the unending smoke-colored snow, I could see the lights in the windows of all the other houses on our hill, and hear the music rising from them up the long, steady, falling night. I turned the gas down. I got into bed. I said some words to close and holy darkness, and then I slept.
Reading Musical Foundation is Berks County's strongest advocate for music in our schools, and you can make it stronger. I'm Randy Shaler, CEO of Zezwitz Music. Zezwitz is proud to support Reading Musical Foundation's Operation Replay. RMF gathers musical instruments from donors like you around Berks County and turns them into new musical opportunities for young musicians who otherwise couldn't afford to play music. Join me and hundreds of others who invest in the future of music in Berks County with RMF, Reading Musical Foundation, for the love of music.
Now you hear the sounds of the street. To be exact, Penn Street, scene of the annual holiday parade put on in the city of Reading. In 2018, we were able to capture some of the audio from this parade so that we could preserve it forever. A band from Philadelphia, started by just 9 men, came up to join us. It was the first time in a long time that the folks at the Reading Holiday Parade were treated to the sounds of a traditional Philadelphia string band, in this case, the Woodland String Band.
Department of Fire and Rescue Services. Our band sponsor is Riverfront Federal Credit Union. They've been providing financial services to the community since 1948. Now please welcome the 2018 Wyomissing Area Spartan Marching Band, led by Senior Drum Major McKinley Morris and Junior Drum Major Alex Tharp. Additional student leadership includes section leaders Maddie Hawley and Ellie Ramirez, percussion captains Tyler Sharra and Emma Morris, and color guard captains Cassie Garaboski and Sophia Strumbakis. Spartan Marching Band performs at football games, parades, and in field show competitions. the Wyomissing Area Spartan Martin Band. Supervised by Kathy Bauer, director. Melissa Benamita, color guard instructor. Joshua Underwood, percussion instructor. And Will Benamita, drill instructor.
Hi, this is Dave Klein from WEEU Radio, Reading Eagle Company, and Pretzel City Productions. Pierogies, kielbasa, angel hair pasta with meatballs and marinara, paella, nice and spicy, potatoes, some goose, a glazed ham or roast beef. Wash it all down with ale, cider, boilo, champagne, or whatever it is you like, and then dance the polka, tarantella, salsa, klezmer horsch, a landler, line dances, or hoedowns, no matter how you celebrate. Please have a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and holiday season, and remember, it's all about unity in spirit, not division by ethnicity or religious belief. May the Creator bless you throughout the coming year, and thanks for listening to WEEU.